Good morning. I'm Jeff Johnson, Executive Director of Government Affairs for IFMA, and welcome to our second in our four-part series on the importance of advocacy. Today, we're joined by Christa Dodoo, Chair of IFMA's Global Board of Directors, and Lena Thompson, Chair of IFMA's Government Affairs Committee. We're looking forward to having an exciting conversation about not only what IFMA has been working on in terms of advocacy and outreach, but also how you and your chapter can get engaged. Before I provide a high-level overview of what IFMA is doing to raise the profile of the FM, both with elected officials and within the built environment, I would have turned things over to Christa, IFMA's Global Chair, for welcome, and then to Lena as well. So Christa and Lena, thank you both for being with us here this morning. We appreciate your leadership and your focus on advocacy and look forward to talking to you about why this is important for IFMA and for the FM profession.
And thank you very much, Jeff. And I'm happy to be here and have this conversation with you and Lena. Advocacy, the importance of advocacy, I don't think I need to really expound on that much because we all know that to be successful and to position our value to our organization, to government, to the community at large, we need to advocate for ourselves. We need to ensure that what we do, the relevance of what we do, we need to make sure we create that awareness and be vocal about that. And that's what advocacy is all about. And we do it in different ways. So today we will go through some of those ways, share ideas, and this is a conversation. So share ideas, see what are some of the big advocacy achievements we've done, what are some of the little things that we can do to be able to ensure that the work that we do, the role that we play in the built environment is still at the forefront of conversations when it comes to government institutions, when it comes to organizations in the private sector at large. So I am excited for this conversation today, and I'm looking forward to sharing thoughts and ideas with everyone joining us today.
Thank you, Christa.
Yeah. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, JJ, both for your leadership, your steady commitment to advocacy in the professional environment, how you just not only doing this work, but you're strengthening our community, the entire facility management community. Leadership like this creates momentum, and momentum creates impact. Now, for me personally, this work is very, very personal. I've always believed that the built environment is more than just the walls and the systems. It's where the people learn, heal, collaborate, innovate, grow professionally. It's where the missions get carried out. It's where safety, sustainability, and performance intersect. And because of that, policy matters. Policy determines how buildings are funded, how they're regulated, how they're retrofitted, how they perform for generations to come. And if we care about the built environment, and I know we deeply do, then we must care about advocacy. And that's really why I want to point that out today.
Lena, that's a great perspective. And one of the things that you've touched on, and we hear this a lot, is that FM is often the job that's hiding in plain sight. And so when our members do their job well, oftentimes they're not seen. But when the FMs perhaps miss a step or something goes wrong, the FMs are always front and center. And so part of what we're doing through our advocacy program is making sure that IFMA and FMs are always front and center. One of the things I always like to quote is a quote from one of our former board members who said, "Advocacy lies at the heart of what IFMA does as a professional association. Telling people outside of FM and outside of IFMA what our members do and why it's important is a critical goal for any professional association, but particularly for IFMA." As we were talking about earlier, one of the most frequent requests we get from our members is, "Tell my boss how important I am." And as we discussed, telling 25,000 different employers how critical their FMs are isn't necessarily possible. But what we can do is go to the places where those individuals get news, the people that they listen to, whether they're an elected official or whether they're in some form of public role, and talk to them about FM and talk to them about our members and help them really understand the value and the impact of what they're doing. And as Lena and I were discussing earlier, we're kind of getting away from the term government affairs because when people think of government affairs, they think of something that happens, in a state capitol or in regard to a specific piece of legislation. But what we're talking about is expanded. Advocacy is the act of supporting a cause or the act or process of supporting a cause, meaning that you can be an advocate for pretty much anything. But in this case, we want you to be an advocate for FM. We want our chapter members and our chapter leaders to be out front talking about the profession, talking about the association, and letting people know why it's important. The program right now has several different elements, as many of you know. We have a U.S. federal program based in Washington, D.C. We have an expanded state and local program that we're working on here in the U.S. as well. We're increasingly engaged with decision makers and stakeholders in the European Union and Brussels. We're working in the United Kingdom, in Canada, and as our global presence grows, working to expand in Latin America and Asia Pacific as well. No matter where IFMA is doing work, the objectives of our advocacy program remain consistent. That's one of the things that's most important in being an international professional organization, is that we have consistency in our messaging and consistency in our outreach. No matter where we're doing work, we want to make sure we're empowering our members and empowering FMs to engage in the process. They need to know what's going on. They need to know how they can provide their subject matter expertise and their passion for FM to transform public policy and corporate goals in a way that positively impacts the built environment. In order to do that, we ask them to introduce FM. Oftentimes, people are not familiar with facility management, whether they're an elected official or whether they're a stakeholder group, whether they're just somebody working in or working around the built environment. We want to help them understand the important role of FM and how it impacts their daily life. We want to create value for our members, both in creating visibility for the organization and the profession, but also underscoring the importance of the education and training that they get through IFMA. We find in this conversation globally that people are expecting a lot more for their buildings in terms of health, safety, and performance. And so we want to make sure we're highlighting the role of the FM within that conversation. As part of those discussions, we want to provide information and insight. Oftentimes, whether you're talking about public policy or whether you're talking about corporate goals, there's a lot of information coming in from lots of different directions. And we find that unless we're part of those conversations, oftentimes FM and the profession can be negatively impacted by that. We want to expand partnerships. A lot of what IFMA does, both professionally and in certain public policy circles, depends on working with other organizations, making sure they know that we're part of a larger built environment and that each of those areas of the built environment are interdependent and rely upon each other. So having expanded partnerships and building relationships is critically important. What I'm pleased to report is that as a result of these efforts, we've seen a lot of success globally. In the US, we've seen various pieces of legislation from the Federal Buildings Personnel Training Act to having FM designated as essential during the COVID-19 pandemic. In Europe, we had references to FM included in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, as well as the heating and cooling strategy. We're expanding our local advocacy efforts, and we're growing international partnerships. Mm-hmm. No matter where IFMA is doing work, the issues that we work on remain very much consistent. We focus on workforce development, education, training, highlighting the fact that buildings are getting much more complicated, and so too is the skill set required to maintain them. We want to make sure that this profession has the resources and the visibility that it needs to continue to bring forward the FM workforce of the future. We spend time talking about public buildings and public procurement, how public sector buildings, those owned by governments, could be run better and more efficiently, like their private sector counterparts, and the resources that are available through IFMA in order to help that happen. We talk about energy and water efficiency. We talk about health and safety, talk about codes and standards, and more than anything, we want to position IFMA as a resource. So if someone has a question regarding how to run a building more effectively or how to reduce energy within a building, how to increase health and safety in a building, we want to make sure they're coming to IFMA, coming to our members, coming to our chapters, and asking us for information and perspective. IFMA is fortunate to have a large number and growing number of public sector partners. As Christa knows, we were recently became part of the UN Commission on Indoor Air Quality. We've been working with a group on diplomatic property collaboration around the world. We work close with the U.S. Department of State, the U.S. Department of Energy, the UK Foreign Office, and now the UK Audit Office. This is something that really touches every facet within IFMA. Each of the team leads within the IFMA Executive Committee are involved in government affairs, and then we rely heavily on our volunteer leaders as well. IFMA's Government Affairs Committee, chaired by Lena, by our consultants based in the U.S. and in Brussels. And then we also work very closely with a number of international partners in coalition work, sharing information, making sure we're working together, and that we really are speaking with one voice on issues that impact the built environment. There are a number of opportunities for our members and for our chapters to get engaged. Around the world, we're seeing an increasing number of chapters set up local advocacy programs, and that's something that IFMA International very much encourages. There are opportunities through industry advisory boards to provide public sector comment and provide testimony, whether verbal or written, on behalf of the built environment. And we encourage people to look for those opportunities. More than anything, we want people to reach out and let their elected officials, let stakeholder groups know who they are, that they're an IFMA member, and that they're available as a resource. Advocacy is a contact sport, meaning the more people you contact, the more likely you are to be successful. So while IFMA International and the staff that we have makes great efforts to contact as many elected officials as possible, we really need to utilize our 25,000 members globally and make each and every one of them an advocate for FM, reaching out, letting people know who they are, really making the profession as visible as possible during conversations that impact the built environment. And they can do that both by writing a letter, reaching out, attending a meeting, serving as a subject matter expert, establishing a government affairs committee, or even just following news in your area that impacts the built environment. Finally, if you have additional questions or need additional resources, you're welcome to reach me at any time through my IFMA email. And there are also some advocacy FAQs and resources available on ifma.org, including a draft speaking request and a draft meeting request, things that are at a very basic level, but can help you get the ball rolling to be an IFMA advocate. And so that at a very high level is what IFMA has been doing to expand our advocacy program globally. But let me bring it back to Christa and Lena to talk about why these efforts are so important, why this continues to be a focus for the board, and what we'd like to see happen in the near and short term. So Christa, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much for the quick overview, JJ, on what we've done and what the team has done so far. And just wanted to go back one step and say it's really critical that reference that you made and that delineation between government affairs and advocacy. And I think that is really key because letting people be aware that everyone is an advocate and everyone can play a role in advocacy, I think it is really important because it's not just a group of people sitting somewhere in Houston or in Europe or wherever and doing the work on behalf of the members. Yes, we have a government affairs committee. Yes, we have a government affairs team that lead and then provide guidance and policy and all that. But when it comes to the advocacy work, everyone has a role to play in that. IFMA being such a global association, or in our drive to be a bit more global in the way we operate, that also affects advocacy. There are a lot of questions sometimes we get about people saying, well, how can I support in my own way? I want to support, I don't know what to do. And most of the time, the conversations have been more of US centric. And at least that's what our members think, that there is a lot of US centric advocacy work that is being done. So it is good that you mentioned some of the areas and some of the regions that we've done a lot of work in. I want to emphasize though that in as much as we are trying to be very global, there is also a very local, geographic specific nature to advocacy. There is no one framework or one template that we can apply to every region. Every single country is different because regulations, standards, and policies in every country is different. So in as much as we have the resources, we have the tools to provide the guidance, and that's what we do, provide guidance to our members and to our components to be able to lead the efforts. They need to also be aware of the country-specific work that needs to go with advocacy. Because whatever we're doing, for instance, in Indonesia, cannot be done in India, cannot be done in Singapore. Yes, the framework will be there. Yes, the template will be there to say, this is how we approach it, and this is how we're able to get these standards and policies implemented. But every component leader, every member of the association need to be aware of that and need to be on the ground to be able to apply the local specific components that is needed to be able to ensure that the advocacy work that we do are practical, they are realistic, and they can actually be implemented to support the work that we do in the built environment.
It's a lot, Christa.
Christa, thank you. That's a great. Sorry,
Yeah,
go please.
No, that was insightful, and I appreciate your overview of that because a lot of times what I've heard from my colleagues is where's the I in IFMA And I know that we're leaning really strongly in towards that. And also, what I heard is that advocacy is like political theater. Well, it's not. It's practical leadership. It's policy influence. It means engaging with your lawmakers and regulators to shape your legislation for your area at the local level and at the state level. Funding decisions that can directly affect how we operate our facilities. To me, it means advocating for realistic building performance standards. What's that look like? You can't just say it. We have professionals on the ground that are doing it. Supporting sustainability legislation that is achievable and measurable, and we've shown that through Energy Star and other things. Ensuring life safety codes, and they reflect operational expertise. Critical all over the world. Providing informed, data-driven decisions to policymakers. When we as FMs contribute to these conversations, policies become stronger, they become more practical and more effective. And when we stay silent, we inherit regulations that don't reflect our operational reality. So advocacy protects our profession, it strengthens our credibility, and it positions FMs as strategic, not reactive. And to me, that means everything. And the other side of that is the education and the awareness. It amplifies that influence. So if we are continuing to train internally and be present, then that's absolutely very important. Facilities are not overhead; they're essential infrastructure. When people understand that respect follows, and when respect follows influence, our influence will definitely expand.
Lena, those were some great points, and Krista, you made some as well. Krista, I wanted to unpack a couple things you said. One of my favorite slogans is, all politics is local, and you had touched on that because oftentimes you kind of lose track of things, whether you're talking about national level politics or multinational politics or whatever it may be. But
Mhm.
everyone in every functioning democracy around the world is responsible to the people that have elected them. Even if you're not talking about a democracy, if you're not talking about the way people vote, if you consume media, if you pay taxes, if you're involved with government in any way, chances are the people that are running that government want to hear from you and want to have your input. And to Lena's point, what FMs are doing is critical. If buildings don't run, the economy doesn't run. If hospitals don't function, the healthcare system doesn't work. So much of what our members do touches critical infrastructure that it really is important that people understand the role of operations and maintenance and education training. Um, and one of the things we frequently hear from people is, so, well, I'm not political. I don't like to get involved in politics. This isn't political. This isn't about personal ideology about left or right or red or blue or any of these other conversations that tend to sidetrack people. It's about being an advocate for the profession that so many people love. That's why they come to IFMA, and using that expertise and using that passion to positively impact both public policy and corporate goals that are out there. And I know you both have had experience doing that in your careers. I wonder if you could just share examples or just insight as to how people respond when you start talking to them about FM and the role that FM has within the built environment.
Sister, you want to go first? I'll go first.
Yeah, sure. And if I smiled, JJ, when you said the issue about, oh, I'm not good with politics always comes up. And I used to think that way. I used to be scared of advocacy. I used to be scared of advocacy day, because yes, I'm not the most political person. I think politics is not my wheelhouse. I'm not going to stand in front of a politician and say or know what to say, because I always got the thinking that I need to be able to speak a certain language that a politician will understand to be able to sell my viewpoint. But I quickly had to learn that no, that is not what advocacy is about. I don't want to be a politician. I don't want to understand politics. All I need to understand is what is the value of my profession and how can they help me. And it's not just, and when we're talking about advocacy too, I think one thing we forget, it's not just about government institutions, it's not just about politicians. We can advocate for with organizations as well, with private sector partners as well. So it cuts across every part of the community. It's all about making sure that you advocate and sell the value proposition of our industry and of our profession. And just typical example that I want to mention, the Ghana chapter, for instance, they recently, in the past couple of years, they've been trying very hard to be able to elevate that advocacy work that they've been doing. And most of the efforts that they've done in the past is related to educational institutions. That is advocacy, nothing to do with politics. They decided that roadmap that they're setting for themselves. We are going to the grassroots first. We are trying to ensure that we bring the next generation up to understand the value of the profession, to make it more appealing and accessible for students to know about our profession. And they've done a really good work in terms of advocacy when it comes to educational institutions, going to tertiary institutions, going to secondary institutions, and showing them what FM is about, and being open to discuss conversations, answer questions about the profession, and mention some of the things that people don't know. Lena mentioned earlier about the criticality of the work that we do and the fact that every part of the building infrastructure, we have a role to play in that. So that is advocacy, helping people into the profession, introducing people into the profession. That is advocacy, and it has nothing to do with politics. So for me, I say find where your strength is,
Yeah.
and advocate in that area. If you think going to government institutions and talking to government agencies, that is not your wheelhouse, then don't do it. Just
Yeah.
look for something else and advocate in other areas, because we all cannot do the same thing. We just need to bring different perspectives to the table. And that is when we can ensure that the value of our profession is known, and then people know about what we do in the built environment.
That's a great point. Lena, your thoughts on that? I know you've been involved with our advocacy program in Washington, D.C., and you've seen firsthand, the impact that our members can have when they come and meet with their elected officials, but also just what a positive experience it can be, just the positive feedback people get from that experience.
Yeah, I will say it was a game changer for me. I mean, it was probably one of the most impactful moments I had, not just in my career, but also in my journey with IFMA. It gave me a big shift, and I don't know if I can explain it. I'll try to say it, put it into facility words. It was one of the most impactful moments on Capitol Hill to meet directly with representatives and their staff. Walking the halls of historical space, sitting in those offices, speaking about the realities of facility management. It was actually very transformative. It reinforced three things for me. First, policymakers are listening. I know we tend to believe they're not listening, but they are. They need our expertise. They must. I love that word because it's very definitive. They must have our expertise. Second, stories from the field matter just as much as statistics. Statistics are great, but when they can see and hear and feel the passion from facility professionals, talking to them about what the work means and why it's important that we change legislation and move in different directions, that has impact. And then third, the advocacy builds confidence and visibility in ways few others can, experiences can. So being a physical presence, someone that they can talk to, rely on, have the expertise, it's elevated my understanding of what leadership really is and how impactful we can be with it. It's expanded my network, it's strengthened my voice, and it made me realize that facility managers absolutely deserve to, must belong in the room. Advocacy is not about just changing policy. It can change you. It can change how you see your community, how you see the facilities community, but not just that, how you see us globally. It's not just one lens. This is a 360 lens on advocacy as a whole. So I encourage all of my colleagues out there who are at the local chapter levels to get involved. Reach out to me and JJ, and if you have some specific questions about how to move, we have developed somewhat of a toolkit so that you don't have to think so hard about it. JJ and the rest of us put a little bit of work into thinking about how can we help elevate the experience, and a toolkit is just that. It helps. Yes, there's a little pockets of things that you may or may use all of it, but you may not use all of it. But I strongly encourage you to get involved. And unfortunately, last year we could not do Advocacy Day on Capitol Hill, but that does not mean that we cannot do it at the state and local level.
And if I may just add to that a little bit, JJ, in terms of, and I mentioned earlier about being location specific, with some of the approach, but Lena mentioned about the toolkit, and there are really good work some of our chapters have done. There are really good examples out there. So people have done the work, and all we have to do is take those examples. I always, and I'm going to mention Singapore. I
Yeah.
always use Singapore as a poster child for advocacy. You
Mhm.
know, it's amazing what the Singapore chapter has done. The level of influence that they have in the FM ecosystem in Singapore right now is mind blowing.
Wow.
And this is just a small team that made it their vision and mission that we are going to be at the forefront. We are going to influence how the built environment is in the country. So they collaborated, they partnered with the Building and Construction Authority in Singapore that is in charge of infrastructure in Singapore. They were able to transform the FM sector in the way that they developed together with BCA an accreditation scheme for FM professionals and FM firms so that for any company who wants to involve in providing FM service to any government institution, you need to go through that accreditation program. They were part of that work. So anything that policy or standards that the government brings into the country, that chapter is involved, that team is involved. They've recognized their expertise, they've recognized their values so much that they do not do anything without tapping into that expertise and letting them know that this is the pathway we're going, this is the roadmap. How can we do it better? And those are some of the examples that we need to look at. How they did it, everyone can use that rule book. It does not need to be the exact way Singapore does it, but everyone can use that rule book. They've influenced procurement of FM services, they've influenced government contracts, ensure that integrated FM is at the core of every government institution in Singapore. They did that, and that's a small chapter. It's not as big as most of the chapters that we have. So as long as the passion is there, as long as the drive is there, there's so many things that we can do. And that, in a way, is going to change most economies in the countries that we have our members.
Agree.
Well, and you both have made so many great points. Let me see if I can unpack a couple of them. Krista, first and foremost, I think you're absolutely right. This isn't a situation where an individual or a chapter needs to reinvent the wheel. There are great examples out there right now of what our chapters have been doing around the globe to create an advocacy program, to make their voice heard, to work more closely with government officials. And to your point earlier, Krista, while they're talking about it in a unique local context, there are a lot of common themes in the work that our chapters are doing, whether it's around reaching out to government and helping government buildings run better, or whether it's on workforce development and training the workforce of the future, or even talking about the role of the built environment in energy and health and safety. These are all common themes and areas where IFMA International can provide support, provide best practices, and help people understand what they need to be talking about and how they can frame it to make it relevant in a conversation with government officials. Lena, to your point, you talked about this as not being something that is good to do. This is something we really have to do. We've had an expression in the Government Affairs Committee for years that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, meaning that if you're not part of these conversations, chances are you could be adversely impacted by them. And I think anybody in FM or in any profession knows, if you miss a meeting or if you're not part of a conversation, chances are the outcome of that conversation won't be what you want it to be. And so we want to make sure that we're at the table, that we're part of these conversations, that we're providing subject matter experts and expertise around these conversations. One of the notes in the chat said that buildings really are the epicenter of the economy, of the workplace, of everything where people come together. And FMs are responsible for that. And so we hear so many conversations about the buildings of the future that can run themselves, the technology that can run itself. But we all know the real case is that the FM is the intersection between the technology and the people working in the building. And so we want to make sure that that more kind of measured approach is manifested in public policy and corporate decision making, which is the goal of the advocacy program here. Yeah. Well, just a couple other things Christa, I know being based in Rome, you've been engaged and increasingly engaged with our EU program. I know you're looking forward to participating in European Sustainable Energy Week. Did you want to provide any thoughts on that or what you're looking forward to most about participation in that program?
Yes, JJ, and you mentioned some of the successes that we've had. For instance, the EPPD in 2024, that's the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive that was issued in EU in 2024. We It seems like it's a small achievement, but it's not, because for IFMA to be able to get the opportunity, even to be recognized as an association, to get opportunity to look at the directive when it was being put in front of the EU Parliament, to look at the text, the wording of the directive, to be able to say, oh, when it comes to building performance, when it comes to energy performance of buildings, facilities management professionals have a role to play in that. And for us to make that input to ensure that FM is mentioned in that directive, that we are recognized to play a role in that directive, I think that is key, and that is one of the big successes that we've had in EU. And there's been a lot of discussions and work that you and the team and DGA have been doing. So you mentioned Pact for Skills is one of that as well. And I mentioned that advocacy is not just only about politics, but there are different ways we could advocate for our profession. So training, capacity building, that is one of the ways that we are improving or contributing to EU when it comes to FM. Being part of that technical or vocational training and ensure that facility management inputs is being recognized and is part of the conversation. I think that is key. And yes, in June we'll be going to Brussels for the Energy Performance Building Week, which is looking at, the name suggests, it's all about performance of buildings. We're making sure that buildings are energy efficient. And in Europe, most of the buildings are older because that is an old continent. So to be able to ensure that we manage those old buildings more efficiently, it is a big discussion in Europe. So Energy Performance Week is all about energy efficiency. It's all about renewable energy, green energy, indoor air quality, to ensure that the buildings are performing at their optimal best. So in June, we will be going to Brussels to take part in that Energy Performance Building Week. Whilst there, as usual, we will take advantage to interact with some of the EU parliamentarians and officials to see how we could help support um, policies and standards in their individual countries. And this is an ongoing work that the team in Europe is doing. It's not just in June, but it's an all year round activity that is done. But whenever there is an event, we take advantage of that, get some face time with the parliamentarians and the EU officials, and to be able to get some of those conversations. And this, I was going to say this year, I forgot to, in 2026, late 2025, some of the work that we also did with Lara and Matt and Taka, we even took it a step further, and we look at some of the government agencies that are affiliated with the EU and the European Commission, and have some discussions. We had some webinars and some sessions with them, with their FM teams, and say, how are you managing these buildings within the European Union, the European Commission real estate portfolio? We share some ideas with them, we share some resources and some of the research that IFMA has done in the past, for them to realize that there is a big network out there. You don't need to be doing this by yourself, and that is all advocacy. Even networking, even sharing ideas with fellow professionals so that they will be able to also improve on the way they manage their facilities. That is all part of the bigger advocacy work that we're doing. So it's been busy in Europe. The team has been really busy trying to ensure that we keep the momentum going. And I think this year there's a lot of events and opportunities coming up that we're going to ensure that we keep that going.
That's great. And you make a couple of fantastic points. First and foremost, that in many places of the world, the buildings that we have are the buildings that are going to be around for a while, and so we can't just tear them all down and start again. We have to improve efficiency with the buildings that are existing today. And so one of the best ways to do that is through improved operations and maintenance and better education training for the people that are running those facilities. And that's typically a talking point that's very well received because people recognize, whether it's public or private sector, that they don't have money to rebuild their building or even do a significant renovation. So how can they make the most out of what they have? And that's through operations and maintenance. And so there's some good opportunities for them there. The other point that you made, and I think this is great, is helping people understand that there are resources available for them. Whether they're creating policy or whether they're physically running a public sector building, IFMA can be helpful for you. We have a network that's ready. We have subject matter experts that can help you out. We have research and resources that are readily available for you. And so part of this advocacy effort is just letting people know that those resources are there and that we can be helpful for you. And then finally, the great thing about outreach, particularly in government sectors, is that the government is not only a validator. They talk about how important certain issues and areas are, but they're a market. Having people that run public sector buildings participate in IFMA is great for the organization. It can grow membership, expand education training, provide information for research and benchmarking. So there are many, many good things that come out of that outreach. And thank you for touching on all those. I know we're coming up on the end of our time here. I just wanted to go back to Lena for any closing comments, and then we'll see if we have any questions here as well.
Thanks, JJ. I mean, all the information shared today, it's inspired me even more. I care about the future of FM. I want the next generation to inherit a profession that is respected, influential, and indispensable. The policies we influence today shape our buildings and how they perform tomorrow. The awareness we build today determines how our profession is valued. This is not just about compliance, it's about credibility and leadership. And when we engage in advocacy, we're not just representing ourselves. We're protecting the future of facility management. And that work matters. It matters to me, and I know it matters to you. So reach out to us. Let us know if you want to be a part of the conversation. We're open to it.
Thank you, Lena. And then I did see a couple questions in the comments. We had one about engagement in India. IFMA has not been directly engaged in India in recent years. We did have a full-time staff person there for a number of years, but we would like to certainly figure out ways that we can engage with the government there. And if you'd like to reach out to me directly, you're welcome to do that, and we can discuss ways to do that. Now, I saw requests through LinkedIn, so I'll follow up on that. The other thing, we've just seen a lot of agreement, a lot of support for advocacy and recognition about the value of engagement with public and private sector stakeholders. So this is something that I know is important for the IFMA board of directors. I know it's important for the organization, and that we'll continue to work on. And with that, Christa, could I turn things over to you for closing comments or perspective here?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that what we did today is just barely scratching the surface. There's a lot of advocacy work that is being done out there. There's a lot of our chapters are doing great work. There's great work going on in Nigeria, for instance, with helping set up public infrastructure departments in state institutions. There is work FM policy and standards currently being discussed at Parliament in Ghana, for instance. There is work being done. I've mentioned Singapore. There's work being done in Latam region. There's so many, examples of work that our team is doing on the ground. So what we've discussed here is by no means an extensive list, but yes, this is just to get the conversation going and let our members know that there is work to be done. I know our Caribbean team, also led by the Trinidad chapter, for instance, is also trying to bring the team in CARICOM together and ensure that we pushing FM in the forefront. They are working with Chamber of Commerce and making sure that FM professionals are part of those conversations. So many examples out there. So if you have an interest, you want to be able to advocate for the profession and help to elevate the work that we do, there are a lot of examples. Reach out. Lena and JJ have said reach out to them, or reach out. You can connect to any of us on LinkedIn as well. Let's get the conversation going. But we need to be able to be ready to be the voice of the profession. No one is going to do it for us. We need to do it because we have the expertise, we have the knowledge, and we have the passion to ensure that our voice will be heard. So please, let's get the voice going. Thank you very much, everyone who has engaged and participated in that. And I'm looking forward to engaging with you all to ensure that we take IFMA and we take FM to the next level. Thank you.
Christa, thank you so much. Very well said. Great wrap up there. Thank you for your leadership on this. Thank you for your commitment to advocacy. Look forward to working with you and Lena moving forward. As you said, this is the start of the conversation, not the end, and we'll be back in front of everybody with more updates and resources moving forward. But thank you for being with us here today, and look forward to working with everyone to make sure the voice of the FM is heard around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.